He was one of Korea's most powerful men, but for 4 months he pushed a broken cart through the streets of Busan and slept behind a fish market, and not a single soul figured it out. Not the office workers who stepped around him without breaking their phone stare, not the tourists snapping photos of the waterfront, and certainly not the woman who would turn his entire understanding of love upside down. Kang Seo-joon was 35 years old and worth more than most countries' annual budgets. Chairman of Kang Global, Korea's dominant shipping and logistics empire, a penthouse overlooking Haeundae Beach, a watch collection that could fund a small hospital. He had conquered every room he'd ever walked into. But somewhere between the board meetings and the champagne toasts, he'd lost something he couldn't put a price on: the ability to trust another human being completely. The breaking point came when he caught his girlfriend of 2 years, Yuna, on a phone call she didn't know he could hear. She was talking to her friend, laughing, describing him as her golden ticket, not her person, her ticket. He stood in his own kitchen holding 2 cups of morning coffee and listened to the woman he was planning to propose to explain how she was managing his moods strategically to stay in his good graces until the ring was on her finger. He poured both cups down the drain and never called her again. 3 days later, Seo-joon called his most trusted director, told him to handle everything, and walked out of his life wearing a gray sweatshirt from a donation bin and carrying nothing but a battered notebook and a pair of worn sneakers 2 sizes too big. No bodyguards, no black cards, no emergency contacts, just a man and a question he desperately needed answered. Would anyone in this city care about him if they believed he had absolutely nothing to offer? 4 months gave him a clear answer. Nothing. People looked past him like he was part of the pavement. Vendors shooed him away from storefronts. A group of university students once held a charity drive for the homeless right on the corner where he was sitting and gave out flyers to everyone except him because apparently he looked too homeless to bother engaging. A real estate agent used his usual spot to take client calls because it was quiet there and nobody important was around. He became invisible in the most crowded ways possible. He was 3 days away from abandoning the entire experiment when she showed up. It was past midnight, early autumn, the kind of night where the sea air bites hard and the streets empty out fast. A woman in a yellow chicken restaurant uniform appeared at the corner where Seo-joon had been sitting, flipping through his notebook. She stopped and looked directly at him, not through him, not past him, directly at him, like he was a full and complete person sitting in front of her. She was black, late 20s, with long locks twisted up on top of her head, holding a paper bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. Her Korean, when she spoke, was confident and slightly melodic, carrying the rhythm of somewhere else entirely underneath it. "You're out here every night," she said. "I've been noticing. Are you eating?" Sejun blinked. He couldn't remember the last time someone had directed a genuine question at him. "Sometimes," he said, making his voice quieter, rougher. She held out the paper bag without drama. "We had leftover chicken at closing. My boss lets me take what would go to waste. I figured you might want it." She set the thermos beside it. "Barley tea. It's still hot." He looked at the bag like it was something sacred. "You don't know me." "I know you're a person and it's cold," she said simply. "That's enough. I'm Adaeze, by the way. Everyone calls me Ada. I pass this corner every night after my shift." "Sungun," he said, shortening his name just enough. She nodded like that was perfectly reasonable, told him he hoped he'd sleep somewhere warmer, and walked off down the waterfront. Just like that. No photo, no hesitation, no performance of goodness. She just did it and left. It was the most dignified interaction he'd had in 4 months. She came back the next night, and the night after that, always after midnight, always with something small from the restaurant, sometimes just tea and conversation. She'd sit nearby, not crowding him, and talk about her shift or ask about his notebook. When he showed her the sketches inside, quick portraits of strangers he'd observed from his corner, she traced the lines with her eyes, like each face told her something. "You really see people," she said one night, "like actually see them. Most people just look." He wanted to say that he'd learned that lesson quite recently. Instead, he just thanked her. She told him about herself in pieces over many nights. Her mother was Igbo from Enugu, Nigeria. Her father had been Korean, a kind and quiet man who passed away when she was 9, leaving her mother to raise her between 2 countries and 2 cultures, and the space in between where she often felt like she belonged to neither fully. She'd come to Busan 3 years ago, thinking she'd find a piece of her father's world. What she found instead was a city that hadn't quite figured out what to do with someone like her. "People stare," she said without bitterness, "just observation. Or they assume, or they talk slowly, like maybe I don't speak the language. I speak 4 languages," she laughed, short and dry. "But here I am."
"Here you are," Sejun agreed, "feeding strangers at midnight." "Someone has to." She also told him about her boyfriend Jihan, a sales director at a cosmetics firm who wore his success like a cologne you could smell from across the room. They'd been together 2 years. Lately, something felt different. He was distracted, impatient, making small cutting comments about her job, her clothes, her hair, framing everything as jokes when she reacted. She said it the way people say things when they've been turning them over for a long time and finally need somewhere to put them down. Sejun listened carefully. He became very good at listening during those months. Their midnight conversations became the one thing he genuinely looked forward to. Ada didn't want anything from him. She thought he had nothing to give, so everything she offered came from somewhere untouched by calculation. He told her edited truths, that he used to work in business, that he burned out badly, that he was trying to figure out who he was without the noise. All accurate, all incomplete. The night everything shifted came on a Wednesday. Ada arrived later than usual, and when she sat down, her eyes were swollen and her hands wouldn't stay still. "He was with someone," she said, not even pacing it. "I went to bring him food at his office. He's always working late. I thought I'd surprise him, and he was there with my friend Chisum, my friend that I introduced him to." She pressed her mouth together tightly. "He didn't even look ashamed. He looked annoyed that I'd shown up." Sejun's jaw tightened. "What did he say?" "That I was too sensitive, that Chisum understood his world better, that maybe we wanted different things." She laughed, bitter and bright. "Different things, after 2 years. And the worst part is my family back home. My mom and my aunties have been planning a small celebration for us. They pooled money for a venue deposit. It's non-refundable. I have to call my mom and tell her everything fell apart, and I can't even get her money back." Sejun sat with that for exactly 1 minute. Then something moved through him, quick and decisive, the way his best business instincts always felt. "Marry me," he said. Ada turned her head so slowly it was almost cinematic. "I'm sorry?" "Temporarily. Your family has a venue. They're expecting a celebration. Let's give them one." He kept his voice steady. "We do this, we keep it simple, and in 6 months we dissolve it quietly. Your mom gets her celebration, you don't have to face everyone's pity, and He paused. "I get to do something real for the only person who's treated me like a human being in longer than I can remember." She stared at him for a very long time. "Seojun, you live on this corner." "I'm not entirely without options. I can clean up. Trust me on that." "This is absolutely insane." "Yes? And you'd really do this? You brought me hot food in the middle of the night for 4 months, thinking you were getting nothing in return. Yes, I'd really do this." She looked out at the dark water. A cargo ship blinked slowly in the distance. Finally, she turned back. Okay, yes, let's do this completely insane thing." They were married in Busan City Hall 4 days later. Seojun had contacted his director, gotten himself decent clothes, nothing extravagant, a clean suit that looked like a careful man's best effort. He'd shaved, cut his hair, looked entirely presentable without looking like someone who owned 3 buildings in Seoul. The registrar asked Ada twice if she was certain. She said yes, both times, without flinching. They moved into her small apartment in Nampodong. One bedroom, a kitchen where you had to open the refrigerator before you could open the oven, a washing machine in the bathroom that sounded like it was having a personal crisis every cycle. Seojin had a genuinely comfortable night's sleep on the floor by the window. He'd slept under a fish market for 4 months. The floor was excellent. Their daily life settled into something surprisingly easy. Ada worked the lunch and dinner shifts, so Seojin had mornings alone to slip out, call in on his company, course-correct anything that needed his hand, then get back before she returned. During their overlapping hours, he fixed everything in the apartment that had been quietly deteriorating. The sticky window latch, the shower pressure, the ceiling light in the kitchen that flickered. Ada kept asking where he'd learned all this. He kept saying he'd picked things up. They cooked together sometimes, her teaching him her mother's ofe akwu recipe while she quizzed herself on shipping logistics terminology for a job application she'd been quietly building toward, a logistics coordinator position at a large freight company. She'd been preparing for months, methodically, seriously, the way she did everything. "Why logistics?" he asked once, carefully neutral. "My father worked in port operations," she said, "and honestly, I'm good at systems, at seeing how pieces should fit." She looked up at him. "Why are you smiling?" "No reason." He'd tried to tell her the truth at least 6 times. Once she got a call from her mother mid-sentence. Once her phone alarm went off for a medication she was taking. Once she said, completely unprompted, "You know, I don't care what you had before. The person you are right now, that's who I know." And the confession dissolved in his chest like something that had already served its purpose. How do you correct someone who just told you that your honesty is what makes you safe? 6 weeks in, her mother called with news. The extended family celebration was moving forward, a big gathering at an uncle's event hall in Lagos. Her auntie Ngozi would be there, her mother's older sister who had opinions about everything and delivered them like weather reports, constant and impersonal. And Ji-hoon would apparently be there too, having somehow become connected to Chisam's branch of the family through recent developments. "My auntie Ngozi measures every man by what he has," Ada said, looking genuinely worried. "And Ji-hoon is going to walk in looking like a catalog page, and you're—" She stopped. "Going to look like I married you out of a street corner?" Seo-jun finished pleasantly. "I wasn't going to say it like that." "Ada, trust me. Can you just trust me on this one thing?" She looked at him carefully. "You keep asking me that. And you keep saying yes." "Because you keep being right," she admitted reluctantly. "Fine, I trust you." He really should have told her before the flight. He was very aware of that on the flight. The celebration was held at her uncle's event hall in Lagos, a beautiful open space strung with lights, filled with aunties in elaborate gele head wraps, and uncles who shook hands like negotiations. Ada's mother found them the moment they walked in and pulled Ada into the longest hug Seo-jun had ever witnessed, then turned to him with eyes that were both welcoming and quietly measuring. "So you're Seoun," she said. "I am." He held her gaze. "Thank you for raising the kind of person who stops for strangers." Something shifted in her expression. "Sit, eat, we'll talk." Auntie Ngozi arrived 30 minutes later in a caftan that announced itself before she did. She looked at Seo-jun's decent but not impressive clothing with the focused efficiency of someone who priced things for sport. Ji-hoon came in behind Chisam, wearing a suit that cost what Seo-jun's entire disguise budget hadn't, and scanned the room until he found Ada. The dinner table was where it happened. "Ada," Auntie Ngozi said, setting down her fork with intention, "I have to be honest because I love you. This," she gestured at Seo-jun, "is not what any of us hoped for you. After everything Chisam's family has shared about Ji-hoon's position, his company—" "Kang Global, actually," Ji-hoon said, eager and polished. "I just closed a partnership with one of their regional distributors. Massive operation. That's the kind of connection that opens doors." "Kang Global," Seo-jun repeated thoughtfully. Ji-hoon nodded, warming up. "Biggest logistics empire in Korea. The chairman basically built modern Korean freight. A man like that, that's generational wealth. That's," he glanced at Seo-jun, "a very different situation from what Ada ended up with, respectfully." Auntie Ngozi made a sympathetic sound. You always had such potential, Ada, and now you're... The doors of the hall opened. Outside, a motorcade of black vehicles had pulled up so quietly and so precisely that the parking attendants were standing very still. Sejun's head of security, a broad, quiet man named Tae, walked through the door in a dark suit and crossed the room in 12 steps. "Chairman Kang," he said, bowing. "I apologize for the interruption. The Singapore delegation moved their timeline. We need you within the hour." The room didn't just go quiet, it rearranged itself. Sejun stood slowly. His posture changed first, the practiced ease of someone who had run rooms for 15 years settling back into his spine, like water finding its level. He straightened his collar and turned to Tae. "Tell them I'll call in from the car. Give me 10 minutes. Ji-hoon's face had gone the particular color of someone whose story has just been rewritten mid-sentence. "You're Chairman Kang? Of Kang Global?" "Of Kang Global," Sejun confirmed with absolute calm. "I mentioned a partnership with one of my regional distributors." He tilted his head slightly. "I'll have someone review that contract Monday." Ji-hoon made a sound that was not a word. Sejun turned to Auntie Ngozi with cool courtesy. "Thank you for your honesty earlier. I understand now where Ada learned to say hard things out loud." He let that settle, then moved to Ada's side. She was staring at him. Her expression was not angry. It was the expression of someone doing very rapid arithmetic. He reached into his jacket and set a small box on the table in front of her. Inside was a ring, clean and extraordinary, the kind of thing designed to look inevitable rather than expensive. He did not kneel because she had told him once, laughing, that grand gestures in front of crowds made her want to run. So he sat beside her, close, and spoke quietly enough that only she could really hear. "4 months ago, you stopped on a corner in Busan and asked me if I was eating. You didn't know me. You didn't need anything from me. You just decided I was worth a moment of your time." He watched her face. "I was running an experiment, testing whether anyone in this world could see a person and not a balance sheet. You were the only answer I found. Then I fell in love with you in the middle of my own test and had absolutely no idea what to do about it." Her eyes were bright. "I lied about what I have. I didn't lie about who I am. The man you know, the one who fixed your washing machine and listened to you practice logistics terminology at midnight, that's me. That's actually me." He pushed the box closer. "Stay married to me, not for any arrangement, not for your family or mine or any audience, because I have never once in my life felt as clearly seen as I do when you look at me, and I would like to spend a very long time returning the favor." Ada pressed her lips together. Her eyes were doing something complicated. "You let me bring you restaurant leftovers for 4 months. Best 4 months of my life. You are so..." She stopped, laughed, wiped her eye with the back of her hand. "Yes, you absolute disaster of a man, yes." He put the ring on her finger, and she grabbed his face and kissed him at her uncle's dinner table in Lagos, while Auntie Ngozi sat with her mouth open and Ji-hoon quietly tried to become part of the wallpaper. When they separated, Sejun looked across the table pleasantly. "Ji-hoon, I'll have HR process your distributor contact's contract termination. We have a policy about partners who conduct themselves this way in their personal lives. It tends to reflect on judgment." He said it the way you'd mention the weather. "Auntie Ngozi, the celebration tomorrow is fully covered, whatever the family needs." He stood, took Ada's hand. "We have a call to make. Merry Christmas."
Outside in the warm Lagos night, the security team waiting at a respectful distance, Ada stood in the parking lot looking at her hand. "Kang Seo-jun?" she said slowly. "The Kang Seo-jun?" "You married me when you thought I was no one," he said. "That's the version of this I want to remember." "I would have married you either way," she said it simply, the way she said everything true. "I fell in love with the man on that corner. This," she looked at the motorcade, "this is just genuinely a lot to process." He laughed, real and full, the laugh of someone who had forgotten they owned one. Your mother is going to have questions. My mother is going to have a spiritual experience, Ada corrected. We should go in before she starts Googling you. They went back inside hand in hand. In the morning, Seoljun and Ada's mother sat at the kitchen table while Ada slept in and told her everything, beginning to end. The test, the bridge, the kimbap, the corner, falling in love without meaning to, trying to confess and failing again. Ada's mother listened without interrupting. Then she said, "You could have told her sooner." "I know." "What were you afraid of?" "That she'd start seeing the money instead of me." Ada's mother was quiet for a moment. "My daughter doesn't work that way." "I know that now." "You knew it then, too," she said gently. "You were just afraid." She reached over and covered his hand with hers. "But you came here. You sat at that table and let those people say what they said, and you didn't flinch. Not for yourself, just for her. That tells me enough." She patted his hand once and stood up. "Welcome to this family for real. Now come and help me with breakfast before she wakes up and catches you being sentimental." On the last morning before they flew back to Korea, Seoljun and Ada walked through her mother's neighborhood as the early heat settled in, past the church where Ada had attended with her father as a little girl, past the market stalls setting up, past neighbors who called out to Ada by name and looked at Seoljun with open curiosity that softened when she smiled. "What comes next?" Ada asked. "We go back to Busan. I go back to running the company. We find somewhere to live that has a working shower, though I genuinely didn't mind yours." "You're a billionaire who didn't mind a shower that cuts out every 3 minutes." "The company was good." She bumped his shoulder with hers. "Soon." Seoljun. Seoljun. She tried it. "I'm going to need a while to get used to that." She was quiet a moment. "Thank you for staying on that corner long enough for me to find you." He stopped walking. "Ada, I wasn't the one doing the finding." She looked up at him.
"I'd been out there for months. I was invisible. You're the one who decided to look." He held her gaze. "You found me. I just had the good sense not to run." She kissed him on a sunlit Lego street while her mother watched from the window and definitely did not call 3 relatives immediately. Back in Busan, under the bridge where this whole story started, Sejun's notebooks were still there, wrapped in plastic sheeting just as he'd left them. He went back alone one afternoon while Ada was at what turned out to be a very successful logistics interview and sat in his old spot for exactly 1 hour. He turned to the last sketch he'd made before everything changed. A woman in a yellow uniform standing in the dark, holding a paper bag, head slightly tilted, looking at a stranger like he was worth seeing. He'd written something small along the bottom edge the night he'd drawn it. She stopped. She actually stopped. "I don't know her name yet, but I think this one's going to matter." He'd been right. He tucked the notebook under his arm and walked back into his life, into the noisy, brilliant, improbable future of a man who went looking for proof that human beings could be good and came home with something far better than proof. He came home with Ada. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because every week we bring you stories about love that finds people in the most unexpected places. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the right person sees you, not what you have.